Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Empower You. My name's Nita Thomas. I'm the executive director, and I've been working kind of behind the scenes more this year, but I just couldn't stay away any longer. I'm addicted to this organization. It's in my blood, and I think you guys can get addicted to it too. A little bit about this organization. It was founded by Dan Ragnold, and I think that was in 2011. And it was his desire to help educate people, have them engaged in things. And our classes are live stream. You can watch them at home. And if you have any ideas about a speaker or a presentation, we would always like to get those. We get some of our better classes from people who are just in the audience. In fact, some gentleman tonight just talked to me about something he might like to share. So don't dismiss ideas that you have as irrelevant. And we are a free university powered by donations. So when you see the donation bucket go around, be assured that all that money goes to Empower You. And we would like any comments and feedbacks you have on classes. And one thing, if you have a question, please raise your hand and ask for a mic so the people online can hear the question. And I think that's all we have. Dan is gonna come up here now, and we are going to give something away.
How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome. Welcome to Empower You. We're glad you're here. To the 15 or 20 people online, we're glad to have you too. So first of all, stick with me for a second. We have got a couple, we're kind of in our new semester here. We've got a couple Empowered Citizens Awards from last semester we want to hand out tonight. The first one we want to hand out to someone who's in the room, and her name is Diane Landy. Where you at, Diane? Right here in the front row. That's an empowered citizen right there. And we also have Steer for coming to classes last semester. Thank you. And I'm going to hand you that too. And the last one we have to pass out from last semester is to our friend Dan Clark. Let's give him a round of applause. Thanks, Dan. So we have a couple of prizes we're going to give away tonight. The first prize is the book that just came out from our author, JT Townsend. Summer's almost gone, so grab your ticket.
884.
884. All right. And your name is?
Sherry.
Sherry. All right, Sherry. And I thought the second thing we'd give away tonight, which would be kind of fun, would be kind of a bonus giveaway. On Saturday, we had Constitution Boot Camp number 48 here at Empower You Studio. It was a great morning because what we tried to do was to try to get kids to come and learn the Constitution. And this is a picture of it. We had kids that were in college or under here that morning, and they had to sit here for 5 hours and learn about the Constitution. There were about 20 adults, 40 total people. And one of the things they learned about that day was the Federalist Papers. So we're going to give this book away tonight, and we're going to have a second drawing. And that is number 933. Is number 933 out there? Right here. Congratulations. And your name is?
Colleen.
Colleen?
Yeah,
Colleen. Congratulations, Colleen. We're so glad to have our executive director, Nita Thomas, back tonight. Let's give her a round of applause, okay? It's good to see you. And I could give her, it would be okay to give her a hug. I wouldn't get in any kind of trouble for that, or I wouldn't get like, I wouldn't have to have a hearing or anything like that. Thank you. Oh no, it's on film.
I'm going to remember that 40 years from now.
Thank you, Nita. Actually, thanks. It's so good that you're here tonight because today, how many of you okay, admit it, how many of you watched? Okay, a lot of you. It was just trouble. It was really troubling for me to sit in front of the TV and watch it. I was up in my office and people would come in and kind of ask me how it was going, and it was just troubling. And there was one article in my favorite newspaper, Sunday, that I read that I've got for you in the back on your way out. I might want you to pick one up if you get a chance. It's by a columnist I never, ever, ever, ever read. And as a matter of fact, whenever I see her columns, I intentionally go to the next page as soon as I can. And her name is Kathleen Parker. Have any of you ever seen her work before? Pretty good writer. I just don't agree with her a lot. But she wrote a piece in Sunday's paper called 11th Hour Slander. And it was remarkably reasonable and remarkably fair. And my only comment about her work is I'm going to have to read her a lot more closely going forward, because it was a great piece on what I watched on TV. So pick one up on your way out if you get a chance. And I want to tell you about a few of our classes coming up that are going to be fun. Tuesday in Empower You Studio, we're going to have a class on how to be an activist. Sounds kind of like a little bit of a harsh word, but it's really not. It's just about how to get involved in your community, how to do things, how to learn the right way to do things so you get results if you want to get results. I've got 4 incredible people coming here Tuesday night to talk to you about how to root for whatever candidate you choose for, how to get involved with your school. You know, I had somebody who's running for the Ohio State School Board call me up and asked me if they could come and speak to you. And some of the things they told me just shocked me. They literally shocked me. We haven't decided whether we're going to let them come or not. We've got somebody coming and talking to you about how to use social media to your advantage if you're rooting for a cause. And then we've got somebody who's going to come and tell you how he got 40,000 signatures against a sales tax increase a couple weeks ago. So be here Tuesday night. We're also going to use that as an opportunity. That's what these cards are for, where throughout Empower You's history, we've tried to have one cause that we could get behind almost every year. And I think this is our 16th semester, so this is a little bit behind, forgive us. But if you have an interesting agenda or an interesting initiative that you think Empower You should get behind, jot it down on this card, throw it on the desk on your way out, and we'll consider it. We're looking for a good initiative to get behind. And that's all we're going to be talking about on Tuesday night. We hope to see you then. Thursday night, we are really looking forward to a tour of the Wiedemann Brewery. Has anybody been there yet? Since it opened, excuse me. How was it? It brings back memories. So we're going to be down in St. Bernard. We're going to meet there, I believe, at 6 o'clock. And we're going to get a tour, and it's $10 for a tasting. It should be a lot of fun. And then after that, we are going to be talking about on October 9th, school choice in Ohio. We hope also to have a couple people in to talk about this crazy issue 1, which nobody really seems to understand. We'll hope to have one person for, one person against that you can get a chance to hear. So we're just really glad you're here tonight. And I want to bring up Betty Overstreet, our community relations manager, who's going to introduce our speaker. Let's give Betty a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank JT for donating one of his books for our giveaway tonight, and JD will be happy to sign that for you after class. He also has books here to sell, so if any of you want them, you can get them after class. JT Townsend is a freelance writer, armchair detective, and lifelong resident of Cincinnati. He is the author of the 2009 regional true crime bestseller, Queen City Gothic, and 2014's Queen City Notorious. His work has appeared in the Cincinnati Enquirer, Cincinnati Magazine, Word Magazine, Crime Traveler, and Clues. He has presented over 300 programs in the Cincinnati area as part of his true crime lecture series, including Jack the Ripper, Lizzie Borden, the Lindbergh kidnapping, and the Lincoln assassination. Please give JT Townsend a warm welcome.
Whoa. Well, okay. Boy, ma'am, you got the first book that anyone has gotten with that drawing. Well, this has been a long journey to get this book out. I won't even go into all the things, the surgeries I had, the death of my editor. I could go on and on. Why is the book so late? I had hoped to have it out, and it's an interesting story. You know, you contact so many people when you write a book like this. And I kept contacting Linda Bricka, our female victim's brother, Jay Bulaw in Chicago. Can you send me some family photos? Well, you know, I'll try to look through them. I'm going to Florida though and everything, and call me later. Then he wouldn't take my calls. He wouldn't call me back. I begged and pleaded. It's August, early August, and I'm ready to turn this book in to the publisher, who's me. Yeah, True Crime Detective Press. And I said, what does this book need? All the pictures I had of the victims, they were newspaper photos, grainy, not very good. So Sunday night, I'm getting ready to turn this thing in. I'm going to call Jay Bulaw one more time. And thank God his wife answered. I explained my dilemma to Mona Bulaw. I heard her hold the phone. She goes, Jay, it's that Mr. Townsend writing about your sister and her family being murdered. We've got to get him some photographs now. We're going to go through them tonight. Sunday night, Tuesday morning, I had a FedEx with over 50 photographs, including Linda and Jerry's wedding album. I added 25 photos to this book. It has delayed the release. I only have paperback tonight. They're digitally printed. Eventually, we'll have an offset press run. The books will look really good. Nobody's going to be disappointed in these books, but to my anal retentive eye, they're just not quite what the press run will be. But I needed to get books in a hurry, so they digitally printed some. That's why the book is late. Why do these pictures matter? That's why. That's Linda Bricka. This is at Jerry's sister's wedding. This is 3 weeks before she was murdered with her family. And there she wrote a little note, just something to remember, be good, Lynn. But little did she know when she wrote that note, her lifespan was about 3 weeks. But that's why it's important. The book just became exponentially better when I added these photos. Mona Bulaw, I worship that woman. Jay Bulaw, I don't know. Thank God Mona answered, because it just made this book so much better. She was a beautiful woman, and I had no photos that showed that, none. And I think her beauty is part of the reason we're talking about this crime. But thank God for Mona Bulaw. But that's why the book's late. Writing a book, I've never given birth. It must be similar. I'm glad that I and other men don't have to give birth, or I believe the human race would die out. I have no question about that. But it's just so much getting these things out to market. Let's do a quick review. I think a lot of you are familiar with the Bricca Murders. You better be. No. You got the first book. Give me that book. No. Well, you'll get a little familiar tonight, but we're going to do a quick review of this, the most notorious cold case in Cincinnati history. I've looked at them all. Nothing compares to this. I'd say in Ohio, the murder of Marilyn Shepard in Cleveland, 1954, is the most notorious cold case. Bricka's a top 5, easy. Let's review that one quickly. Whoa. There we go. Oh. 1966, we had a lot going on. Vietnam War, race riots, hippies, counterculture. But good old Cincinnati was just sitting there like your maiden aunt with all the cats. You know, the world's coming to an end. I'll move to Cincinnati and I got 10 more years. But this was also a seminal year for crime stories. In July of 66, Richard Speck on the left kills 8 student nurses in Chicago. Do you guys, people remember this? What the heck? I mean, and then 2 weeks later, Charles Whitman goes up on the Texas Tower in Austin and shoots 13 people. We had no template to process these kinds of crimes. It's absurd. I mean, they're happening now all the time, mass shootings, mass killings. But back then, this was just insane. People couldn't even relate to these crimes. And then a week before the Bricka murder, Valerie Percy, there in the middle, the daughter of senatorial candidate Charles Percy, was murdered in their mansion at Kenilworth, Illinois, beaten to death in her bed by an intruder, apparently. And that is unsolved to this day. And a week later, the Brickas were murdered. Some people have tried to connect these two crimes. Read the book. I've got a lot to say about that. But anyway, what a year. What a year for high-profile crime, just with these three. It's September 27th, 1966. Bricka neighbors were worried. They hadn't seen the Brickas since Sunday late afternoon. It's Tuesday night. Two neighbors investigate, open the door, and smell 48 hours worth of death and decay in that house. And the flies were already buzzing. It was obvious there were dead people in there. Linda, Jerry, and Debbie were found stabbed to death. This crime was almost immediately unexpected, hideous, baffling. It was a crime that seemed to transcend normal human motives of lust and greed and revenge. It was almost a crime like that defied the power of gravity. I mean, again, this is the one that every detective wants to catch but doesn't. A triple homicide of this magnitude with a very telegenic victim, female victim, a former airline stewardess, and every newspaper account made sure to mention former airline stewardess. Folks, this is the 1960s. Airline stewardesses, the implication was there. And the workaholic husband, Jerry, and the beautiful daughter, Debbie. Tell you this real quick. My agent will be sending a book to Dateline. Dateline's going to do a show on this if I have anything to say about it. So, huge investigation engulfed the Hamilton County sheriffs, absolutely engulfed them. Reams of information and tips. I mean, they just couldn't process all this information. Look at the Inquirer coverage the next day. Neighbors think Bricka killer no stranger. They already decided one day into the investigation that this was a personal cause homicide, that the killer knew the victims and was emotionally entangled with them. This was not a crime committed during a robbery. This was not a contract hit. This was not a serial killer. There was some question about whether Linda Bricka had been raped or had recent intercourse. And again, you got to read the book. I talk a lot about that. Look at that front page. You got three different things. Article up top, article there, diagram of the bodies, and immediately the reward money went up. Albers put up $5,000. Doesn't seem like much, but in 1966, the average household wage was $6,900. And this reward eventually got up to $25,000. That's about 4 times somebody's average salary. This was a big deal. No case has ever been worked harder by the county. Search in the sewers, search in the backyards. They interviewed over 400 people. Anyone who had contact with the Bricka family, because again, we're considering this a personal cause homicide. You know, if you worked with Jerry Bricka at Monsanto, they were going to question you. If you did Linda Bricka's hair in a salon, they were going to interrogate you. If you babysat for Debbie Bricka, they were going to grill you. Anybody that knew this family, because we all have human friction in our life. We've all rubbed someone the wrong way or stepped on some toes. And every once in a while, you get someone who lets it fester. And then you have an audacious crime like this. But I think they were doomed from the start on this investigation. A scant amount of physical evidence. And by the way, folks, the day the Brickas were killed, we had a serial killer loose in Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Strangler had already taken 4 victims. Now here you see the map. There's the Bricka location. Here's the Strangler crimes. Strangler was basically Walnut Hills, Clifton, and Price Hill, the Strangler Triangle. And the Brickas are way out here. And it instantly became apparent that the Cincinnati Strangler did not kill this family. But how about that? A serial killer's killed 4 victims. This beautiful family is slaughtered in their home, including a 4-year-old child. And then 2 weeks after the Brickas are killed, Alice Hockhausler is murdered on her own driveway by the Strangler. It's almost as if the Strangler was throwing down to the Bricka killer. Oh yeah? I'll show you something audacious. She's 30 feet away from her beautiful home in the Clifton Gaslight District where her husband and 7 children are sleeping. She struck down on her own driveway. There's the picture of her laying dead in the garage. Look at that headline. This was Kennedy assassination font. This is Pearl Harbor font. Look at all these. The press went nuts. It spawned the largest law enforcement mobilization in city history. And the city just went off the edge. They moved Halloween to the daytime. If you want an example of an overreaction to this situation, Strangler wasn't attacking children. Halloween moved to the daytime. I was in 7th grade. I'm debating whether I'm too cool to trick or treat. Well, they moved it to the daytime. That was it. I wasn't doing it. No. It was 7th grade. I'd gotten really tall that summer and things were just kind of weird. And we had a serial killer running loose and this family was murdered. If you read my book, you'll see why I'm obsessed with this case. I talk about it in the preface. I had a horrible nightmare about this crime. It's never left me. And thus the book and my obsession. I think some of you know eventually the Strangler killed a 7th woman and a man named Posty Lasky was arrested. He was never tried or convicted in any of the 6 strangulations of elderly women. He was sentenced to die for the stabbing death of a 30-year-old woman in a taxi cab named Barbara Bowman. The strangling stopped. I certainly addressed Lasky's involvement. If you're looking at this Bricka book, the Bricka is the A plot. That's about 85%. Strangler's the B plot. There's about 15% Strangler. You can't separate the 2 crimes. And they come together in a juxtaposition that pushed Cincinnati to the abyss. No longer the maiden aunt with the cats. Cincinnati lost its innocence in 1966, especially that fall. I remember. Does everybody kind of remember this in October of '66? It was a really big deal. Women were petrified. You couldn't get a guard dog. Locks, guns, the whole thing. Some of you might recall eventually the press leaked that the Bricka family slaying probe had narrowed to a single suspect, an unknown, unidentified suspect, an unsub, who was hiding behind his lawyer. And the thing stalemated, and 52 years later, we're no closer to solving this case than they were when they put this article out. True Detective magazine did a piece, and they directly confronted this unknown man who out of 400 people was the only one to lawyer up and not cooperate with the investigation. Supposedly, that's the story. If you read this book, you'll see there was a lot of suspects. Don't think you know the answer to this case or the answer to the story. So there it ends. I want to talk some victimology here. If you've seen my other program, how many people were at my Price Hill Bricka program a couple years ago? Not too many, yeah. That one's more in detail on the case. Again, I'm assuming again we've got some decent Bricka knowledge here for the most part, except the lady that won the book. What's going on with the Bricka family? Why did this family get murdered? I mean, you go over to the west side, you look at this house and you see 7 or 8 on the street that look just like it. There's thousands and thousands of people over there. Why this family? Why did this family get murdered? What was going on in their lives? Oh, police keep tabs on killing suspect. I like these Frank Weichel columns. I learned that the police had continued surveillance on a prime suspect for 3 years, even drinking next to him at the bar, hoping he'd get drunk and maybe say something incriminating. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, it's stalemated 52 years ago. This is an unsolved case, but there's no statute of limitation on murder. Bricka House is now for sale again. It always goes for sale when I write about it. So today, in 2018, the Bricka house sits in sunshine, but it also sits in shadow because 3 people died in these rooms right here. What kind of people were they? I mean, you're trying to solve a case like this, you got to get inside your victim's skin. You have to know them almost better than they knew themselves. It's a personal cause homicide. Whoever killed them is emotionally involved with one of these victims. That was their determination, and I agree with it. That's the kind of crime we're looking at here. Some people still want to call it a mafia hit. It'd be the strangest mafia hit I've ever heard of. It's usually just a bullet in the back of the head. They don't kill a whole family. Weird. Look at Linda Bricka, age 12. One thing we know about her, pathological love for animals. I read her mom's interview. Linda used to dig up pets that died that they buried and carry them back into the house. You know, I did that once when I was 7. I was sure the cat was still alive. I get it. I understand it when you're that age. Just really loved animals. Linda grew up in Chicago, Jerry in San Francisco, both upper middle class upbringing. Jerry loves swimming. Look at that picture of him. He's just a freshman in high school, but he's already developing the muscles that he would have at the time he was murdered. Jerry Bricka, if I learned one thing from the crime scene photos, Jerry Bricka was a very muscular, powerful, about 5'9", 185, 190 pound man. I find it hard to believe a single killer could have handled him. But anyway, here they are growing up. Who in their right mind, when they're that age, could even conceive they'd be murdered someday? I don't know. It's just, it's mind-boggling for me. Dan, am I moving out of range too much? Am I good? Tell you a little story about Linda Bricka. Look at her high school senior picture. She's only 16 in that picture. She's 17 in the other one. Notice she's happy in the first one, sad in the second. Why is that? When she was 16, she fell in love with a 30-year-old man, a friend of the family who owned his own business. They became engaged. She switched high schools so she could graduate earlier. Linda's parents liked this young man. They'd known him for a long time, but this was a 14-year age difference. But they got engaged, wedding invitations went out, gifts were arriving. Linda was ecstatic. Look at that picture on the left. And then this guy broke it off 2 weeks before the wedding. Linda went absolutely into a funk. Not a nervous breakdown, but there you see her after the breakup. She was morose, and she set about going to college and doing everything she could to close the gap between her and this man. But over Labor Day, he married someone else. She started dating another boy, and it was going well, a boy her own age. And then he was killed in a car accident sometime after this photo. Linda did have a nervous breakdown. Her mother took her to Florida for 6 months, from October of 60 to March of 61. Thought about that 6-month thing, because there's an interview in the file, her Seattle OBGYN. He told the police that she had had a pregnancy prior to Debbie. 6 months in Florida. Interesting. Was she just down there for rest and recreation? Or did she have a child? Did she give a child up? Would the father of this child be angry? Again, did she rub someone the wrong way with an unwanted pregnancy? This is the kind of thing police are looking for in a personal cause homicide. People can take years to exact their revenge. So that's an interesting one. I talk about it in the book. She comes back from Florida and becomes a United Airlines stewardess. Look, there's she on graduation day. Stunning looking woman. Those blue eyes just went on forever, they said. There she is at a United Airlines party with the mark on her. I had never seen any of these pictures. These are all the treasure trove that Mona Beulah gave to me, and then some. She meets this guy, Jerry Bricka. There's Jerry in high school on the left. There he is with his fraternity at Stanford on the right. You can already see he's a husky guy. He's a very serious guy. He's a chemical engineering student. He meets Linda on a flight. Linda comes to his apartment where they're having a party with some stewardesses. Suddenly they're a couple. Nobody really knows how. And she almost immediately gets pregnant. On a United Airlines flight in November of '61, Linda became ill and threw up. She was terminated. It was morning sickness. I believe she and Jerry had a secret marriage ceremony so she could keep her job. But when she got sick on the flight, it was over. They got married 3 weeks later in Barrington, Illinois, outside of Chicago. The happy day. Both Linda and Jerry's family were examined at great length. Did Linda force him into the marriage? No, not at all after the pregnancy. If anything, she was reluctant. But Jerry insisted he loved her and wanted to marry her. So they came to Chicago and had, I guess, a second wedding for the parents, more of a show wedding. Look at those photos of Linda and her mother. And there's Linda's baby pictures right there. Look at those bridesmaids' dresses. This is Jerry Bricka's sister, right there, Joan. 2.5 months pregnant, can't really tell. Face looks maybe a little puffy. Linda Jane Beulah becomes Linda Jane Beulah Bricka. There's Linda and her father. There's Jerry and her after the ceremony. Apparently a happy day. Rather sparsely attended ceremony. I think it was rather impromptu. Cutting the cake, kiss for luck. Look at these pictures, folks. It's just, this couple is doomed. I don't know if you believe in fate or destiny or whether God has a plan for you. Somehow a collision of circumstances came together and doomed this couple. And they have no inkling on this day that 5.5 years later, they would be murdered savagely and their names would keep all Cincinnati citizens spellbound for weeks and months. But we just don't know. But again, why? Why is this couple doomed? That's the whole thing I'm trying to find out in this book. Debbie. I had only seen one photo of Debbie in the newspaper. It's the only photo I ever saw of her. And they sent me several nice ones. What a beautiful child. I think she was about 3 here. She was a precocious youngster. I interviewed her babysitter. She talked like she was 10. She recognized people. She identified people. She spoke in complete sentences. This was a bright, precocious child. And when people think about the Bricka case, why did they kill the child? I think the answer is obvious. She could identify the killer or killers. If Jerry and Linda were killed out of rage, killed out of passion, I've seen this before with multiple homicides, a second victim is killed out of fear. If you've seen my Lizzie Borden program, Lizzie killed her stepmother in a rage. She killed her father out of fear because she knew that he would know that she had killed his wife. So you have the rage killing followed by a fear killing. The only thing the killers felt toward Debbie was fear. There's Linda with Debbie at the zoo. Interesting to notice in the interview file, people commented she was not affectionate with her daughter, but she was extremely affectionate with her 2 dogs. So here's a rare picture of her actually holding Debbie. This picture was taken of Debbie in March of 1966. She and Linda are in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Why? Vacation? Trial separation. Oh yeah, the family knew. She took Debbie down there and she and Jerry separated. 4.5 years into their marriage, this couple had a troubled union. Lots of problems, emotional, physical. There was apparently a sexual issue that cropped up between the couple. Again, it's all addressed in the book. But at this point, it's safe to say that Jerry was probably sleeping on the couch. Now, eventually, Linda spoke to a friend of hers down there, and she said about Linda's marriage, do you want to lead Jerry by the nose or by the hand? And she called Jerry. He came down and picked up her and Debbie, and they went back. Trial separation over. But I believe from April and March on, in 1966, that Jerry was probably sleeping on the couch. And I don't believe this couple was being intimate. And that's going to figure in this story. Look at that picture of Debbie. She's looking out over the ocean. What's she thinking about her future, which at this point is down to about 5 months? But how can a little child even comprehend that? Yeah, that's a great shot. Come on. Whoa, the Wayback Machine. I interviewed 40 people for this book. One of my most interesting interviews was this woman, Linda Zeff, 18 years old in 1966, primary babysitter for the Brickas. I think this woman knew more about what was going on with Linda and Jerry than anybody, because Debbie has a lot of babysitters. They've got a whole shuttle system, but she is the primary babysitter because she gets along well with Linda's dogs. The babysitter had to get along with the dogs. There's Linda again, 3 weeks before her murder, bridesmaid at her sister-in-law's wedding. Here's Jerry's Monsanto badge. These are fairly recent photos. Look at the size of Jerry. Can you just see his neck? I saw morgue photos of all the victims. And by the way, there's no crime scene or morgue photos in this book of the Brickas, but there are some crime scene photos. Even lying on this slab, 3 days dead, Jerry Bricka was a physically imposing man. I was stunned by his musculature, very powerful. And again, people spoke of Linda's beauty. Well, there it is. I mean, I didn't have a single photo before Mona Bulaw that showed how beautiful she was. Now I have numerous. And her beauty and her love of animals, I think that's behind the motive for this crime. It's murder day. Rainy day. Dawned rainy. Sunset, it got a little dry. You know, in this book, I've recreated the whole week leading up to the murders, the timetable, everything I could find. And I have an entire chapter devoted to the murder day. Every possible thing that was seen, strange person that was seen, phone call made, errands run. It's the countdown to murder. What's going on in this period with our victims? And I'm astounded to say, Linda Bricka, on the last day of her life, is only, how we say, on the grid. One time, she calls in a prescription to Walgreens about noon, and Jerry picks it up about 4. That's it. We have no record of anyone seeing her, talking to her on the phone, coming to see her, until the killers arrived. And that's frustrating. We know a little bit about Jerry's movements that day. He went to work on Sunday like he always did. But Linda, strangely silent in this house with Debbie. You know, did someone come over and see them that day? We won't know. You know, was there a prelude to murder that day? A dry run? Checking out the house? But again, we have no, there was no grid then, obviously, per se. But we only got that one phone call. One guy, a pharmacist, spoke to her on the day of her murder. I find that fascinating and frustrating at the same time. Took this picture from the catwalk between Lawrence and Greencrest. Does anybody know this neighborhood well? Okay. I tell you, if I'm stalking the Bricka house, I'd be on this catwalk with binoculars centering up on this TV room, because that's where the family was when the killers entered. I'm certainly convinced the killers entered right through this back door. I'm almost positive of it. I've gone completely off my notes. Well, it's tough. I know so much about this case. My head's like a Bricka pinata. We just need to bash it open and get it over with. Put me out of my misery. I think they were all in the TV room, without doubt, watching the world premiere of Bridge on the River Kwai. 60 million people that night watched it. The Bricka TV was turned to that channel, but Ed Sullivan had the Supremes on. So it was a good night for TV. I think Jerry took Debbie from this room up to her bedroom to put her to bed. She had one red knee sock on, one off. I believe the killer or killers entered this door, unlocked, confronted Linda Bricka in this room. Debbie's bedroom's right above it. Jerry hears a disturbance, comes down. I think there's a nasty confrontation in this room. And again, you got two yapping dogs, a beefy, strong man, and a healthy woman. I don't think one guy could have done this. The carving knife, the Bricka carving knife is missing from the carving set. One guy with a carving knife's not going to handle Jerry Bricka. I think they're herded upstairs to this bedroom by a second man with a gun. I don't see how else it's feasible. And the dogs were found locked in this room and strangely quiet, almost as if they'd been drugged. That's what the babysitter said 2 days later when she saw them. These were very aggressive dogs, especially around men. But if you knew the dogs, they would be nice. It's just one of many things that says the killer knew the victims. No signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds, nobody yelling or screaming. Dogs, no factor. I mean, they weren't big dogs, but if you got a poodle ankle biter on your leg, you're gonna have a hard time killing somebody. They were no factor. Debbie, or Jerry and Linda were found right about here on the corner of the bed. Jerry's on his back. Most of the stab wounds are to his back. His throat was cut. A pair of socks was taped in his mouth. We'll talk about those in a minute. Linda is thrown on top of him. Her breasts are exposed, but it seemed to be a function of the very skimpy nightgown she's wearing. This neckline, I kid you not, Lorraine, was like this. This thing was like this. And she appeared to have been stabbed and thrown on top of Jerry, and it might have dislodged her breasts. But when you see the crime scene photos like I did, think about that, folks. I've been thinking about this case for 48 years, and finally they put the crime scene photos in front of me. And her breasts were exposed. I'm like, sex crime? Looked like a sex crime. And then I look at Jerry and I'm like, oh my God, he's huge. Jerry's face looked like a badly dressed steak. He had been beaten severely. And again, throat cut, socks in the mouth. Linda stabbed from the front the whole time. Eyes open in the morgue photos. Yeah, it's creepy. I don't even want to talk about the photos of Debbie. I can say that she was murdered in the next bedroom, 4 knife stabs all the way through her body, and she appeared to have been dragged. She's completely arms and legs. Killer didn't spend much time on her. Again, no rage, fear. Come on. Oh, clicker's not working. Help. Can you move me forward? Okay, I may have to call on you again. Folks, I'm an armchair detective. I'm not a cop. I'm not law enforcement. I love being an armchair detective. I've got no case backlog, no boss, no agenda. Presumption of innocence means nothing to me. Reasonable doubt. I don't care a fig about reasonable doubt. Hearsay, gossip, rumors, let me hear them. I'm not trying to convict someone legally. An armchair detective is trying to establish probability who is the most likely killer. It's the kind of reasoning we do. This is the most likely scenario that resulted in these 3 people dead. I like to say the killer always takes something from the house, or excuse me, the killer always leaves something at the scene and takes something with him. Well, here we go. You see that report there? I'm not going to read it to you because your eyes would glaze over. That's a chemical lab report on the piece of tape covering Jerry's mouth. It's the only thing on the crime scene that didn't belong there. Everything else belonged except that piece of tape. And they sent samples, or well, they actually had, I don't know, they sent letters to 200 tape places. Piece of adhesive tape was used to tape the mouth of one of our victims in a triple homicide. And after an exhausting process, this tape finally came back, an unusual 1 7/8 inch width, water soluble, used for medical or veterinary purposes. That's what the killer left. It's the only piece of evidence that didn't belong. What did he take? That is a replica of the missing carving knife. Now, most people felt that the carving knife had been hidden away to keep it away from Debbie. Thus, the killer knows the house and knows the knife will be there. Linda Zeff, the babysitter, said, oh no, it was kept right in the buffet. So theoretically, a stranger could have used this knife. But I'm telling you now, one guy with that knife against Jerry Bricka, who would have fought like a tiger to protect his family if he thought they were going to be murdered, one guy with that knife couldn't do it. He'd make a move. We're talking multiple killers. I'm convinced of it. And I wasn't convinced of it until I saw the crime scene photos. You got to see the crime scene photos to make these kind of determinations. It changed my whole concept of the crime. And I'd only been thinking about it for like 48 years. I'll give you a little preview of this. When you have, imagine having a triple homicide on your street or in your neighborhood. You know, you live close by. What's going to happen? The police are going to come and shine a light up your exhaust pipe, so to speak. Yeah, you got some family secrets. You're a little weird. Spotlight coming now. I see this in every major investigation. Weird people that probably had nothing to do with the crime, suddenly, like a rat in the basement, they scurry out because this giant triple homicide spotlight. The weirdo, look at that. He's 2/10 of a mile away from the Brickas. He can see their backyard from his. A few days before the murders, this 51-year-old man kept a woman visitor in his house against her will by locking the doors and trying to make her drink his special wine. This guy's just around the corner from our triple homicide. This is how they referred to him. It's not a socially acceptable term. The retard, 27-year-old man, 8/10 of a mile away. He had an arrest in 1958 for grabbing an 8-year-old child from behind, and he was known to annoy children in the neighborhood, 27 years old, living with his parents. I don't think they wanted this to come out. The ex-con, he's less than a half mile away. A neighbor reported he was just released from prison for attempted rape. He was seen in the Western Bowl parking lot the night of the murders. Of course, that's very close to our crime scene. This is just a sampling of some of the strange citizens living well within 1 mile of the Bricka crime scene. People living lives of quiet desperation, and they're suddenly thrust into the scalding spotlight of a triple homicide investigation. I mean, everybody's got little skeletons in their closet, right? Every family. But when you're being interviewed about a murder near you, you got to make those skeletons dance a little bit, so to speak. Yeah. I don't think any of these people was a serious suspect, but it just makes me wonder. There were a lot more like this too. Every neighborhood's got some strange people, but it's going to stay secret unless there's a gruesome triple homicide nearby, and then it won't. Come on. People think they might know who the killer is. Well, get a load of these names from the file. Alan Sipple. This guy was a Jewel Tea route salesman. Anybody remember Jewel Tea from the West Side? They delivered coffee makers and tea makers. 2 weeks before the murders, Linda Bricka tried to return a coffee maker, and this guy went ballistic on her front porch. She even told her mother about it. She was very upset. This guy was rude to her, cussed her, threw the coffee maker down. And guess what? 6 years previously, in 1960, he raped 2 women at knife point and served 5 years. This guy's on Linda Bricka's doorstep 2 weeks before the murder, cussing her out. And this guy likes to stab and rape, or at least he did. How about that for a suspect? Edward Clark. This was a man who was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and apparently spent some quality time with Linda when she was down there. Right, Lorraine? Yeah. Jim Cannon, Jerry Bricka's nemesis at Monsanto. Boy, these two guys did not get along. Of the 20 people interviewed at Monsanto, Jim Cannon is the guy, and he showed up the night the bodies were discovered. There's about 75 or 100 people outside this house. And Jim Cannon showed up acting very strangely. He told some people he didn't know this was Jerry Bricka's house. The Monsanto guy said, "You carpooled with him a couple years ago." "Well, I didn't know this was his house." Very strange, very detailed alibi. His alibi was so detailed, it made him instantly suspicious. Swede Johnson, Marion Earl Grubbs, Johnny Harriet, animal trainers from the Shrine Circus. Linda Bricka in April was seen working behind the scenes at the Shrine Circus with the animals. No one else was given access. What did she do to gain that access? These are rough, carny guys. You know the kind with their animals. I hate these people because they mistreat their animals. Some of these guys had like a trailer with a little couch and a rollaway bed. And some of them were known to let girls ham around with their animals in return for sexual favors. Did our Linda do something like this? Because she was so obsessed about working with animals. She was seen working with an elephant, a bear, and a monkey behind the scenes by several people at the Shrine Circus, working for these rather disreputable men who had wives that would have hated her, would not have been happy with the attention she was paying to her husband. Again, somebody rubbed the wrong way. It's a personal cause homicide. Richard Tucker, he stabbed a woman in West Virginia in January of '67, but guess what? He lived on the West Side in September of '66. Arthur Cheney, Prentice Reynolds, Marvin Melbourne Brown. I picked those 3 guys out. These are your low-level criminals, bad actors, salty dudes. These guys are known to be in the area of Green Township, Bridgetown, the night of the murders. Did they kill them? They looked at all 3 of them. These are the kind of guys that would possibly kill people, and they're right there. They have proximity. And this isn't even my top 5 list, or even my top 10 list of suspects. This is like my second 10. Some of you may know this thing came down to the second interview with Dr. Fred Leininger. Linda worked for him that week for 3 days. Anyone find that odd? Linda Bricka's known this man since 1961, but she and her family are only murdered after she goes to work at that clinic. She works Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They're murdered on Sunday. What did she learn at that clinic? What did she find out? What were they doing? Did she threaten to expose something? I mean, if she doesn't go to work at the clinic, are we even here talking about this? I wonder. I suspect not. Going to work at that clinic, I think it set the stage for murder. I really do. But Leininger over there, he lawyered up when Lieutenant Herb Vogel was questioning him, and he got Richard Moore, a really good attorney. And this guy was a bulldog protecting his client's rights. And they never again sat down with Leininger after the second interview, where he incriminated himself several times. And I devote some time in the book to that interview. It's called Consciousness of Guilt. The detectives are looking for either a tell, body language, or a leak You know, when they see psychological distress leak through. And he apparently exhibited it in the second interview. But here's the guy who stalemated between these two. Only 16 interviews were flagged of the 400. Leininger's is one. Here's 3 more guys with flagged interviews, and you might recognize the one in the middle. Herman Rader, veterinary friend of Leininger, stabbed 2 people in 1958, spent a year in a mental hospital. Stanley Keller, just a weird guy, tons of complaints at his clinic. I just took my dog in for a checkup, and he called the next day and said the dog was really sick. I couldn't come visit it though. And oh, he called that night and said your dog died. Sorry, when we cremated the body. Tons of these. This guy was close friends with Fred Leininger. I've had several people come forward and say that he made suggestive comments and that they were frightened of him. I've got several stories. One's in the book. Glenn Ryle. Fred Leininger brought animals on the Skipper Ryle show for the animal show and tell. Ryle and Leininger were tight. They were very close friends. If we're looking for a second man, if Fred Leininger is having trouble, because I can tell you this, it's not in the case file. I've got a hearsay account that on Wednesday night before the murders, Jerry Bricka threatened to beat up Fred Leininger. Not directly, he threatened it to another person. And another person heard it. So one of the people that heard it's alive and the rest are dead. It's hearsay. I believe it. If Fred Leininger is having trouble with Jerry Bricka, boy, here's your top 3 friends. I mean, he was close with all these men, and they all appear to have some weird, kinky skeletons. I mean, Glenn Ryle, I mean, you know, he was rumored to be quite the womanizer. But, you know, he was a beloved kiddie show host. I always thought he was a bit creepy, just me. So all 3 of these interviews were flagged, all 3. We're getting close here. This is one of the best witness statements. I'm not going to read it. 2 men leaving Western Bowl the night of the murders. If you know Western Bowl, you go out the side on Lawrence, take a left, hang a hard left on Greenway. They're driving toward the Bricka house. You know, they see 2 cars parked in front of the Bricka house, just like this. Here's the Bricka house. There's no other cars on the street. It's raining. It's Sunday night. No one has any reason to be out. And yet he sees 3 people getting into a car right here. 2 men and a woman. A guy right behind him who doesn't even know him sees the men actually in the car and sees this person coming around to the driver's side, and he said they looked frightened. Now he said it appeared to be a long-haired man. The first guy said it appeared to be a woman. Again, with 2 men right here. Now, folks, nobody has any reason to be out at 10:30 on a Sunday night when it's raining. We've all got to go to work. You got school, the jolt of the alarm clock. These are the only people on the street at 10:30, 10:45, 11 o'clock. They appear to be leaving the Bricka house where a triple homicide has just occurred. But these people, they're just going home. They rolled some frames, hoisted a few Hudies. Why would you look at someone closely? You don't know there's a murder going down. So they just got kind of a glancing thing. Folks, this is the murder party. I'm convinced of it. But, you know, hey, just some people getting into a car. Now, both these witnesses, once they heard about the murders, they drove back and they said, yes, it was the 3rd house from the corner where the road takes a dip before it goes up. And it takes a dip right in front of the Bricka house. They got the right house. 3 people leaving our crime scene. 1 that may be a woman, maybe not. That's one of our better witness statements. But who had a reason to be looking for anything? You know, there's no sign triple murder occurring here. And we had 48 hours before the bodies were discovered. You know, it's Thursday night. How many of you can remember what you did Monday night? I mean, seriously, everything recedes in that first 48 back into the fog of your rearview mirror. You saw some people outside a car. They talked about hypnotizing these two men to enhance the recall. They never did. I'm going to move through these because we're getting close on time. This was a great interview. One of Linda's neighbors dished on her. Hey, Linda was prettier, thinner, and younger than all the women on this street. And they sharpened their claws about her, you know. Wasn't happy at having sex. Somewhat the type that would lead him to the point and then say, forget it. She was gorgeous and knew it. Felt sorry for the man that killed the 8 nurses in Chicago. Brought dirty jokes home from Florida. Not a real loving type mother. Ouch. Yeah, wow. That's what I meant. Wow. Boy, these women, their young neighbor who washed her car in a swimsuit with their older husbands in their 30s and 40s. Linda Bricka was not popular on the street. I'm going to skip those two. Maybe the best witness statement in the file. Larry Fopp, he's at the High-Low Deli. It's 10:30 the night of the murders. It's raining. The High-Low's still there. Customer comes in, says he has a medical emergency. This guy is disheveled. He's distraught. He's wearing a sport coat that doesn't match the rest of his outfit. He's nervous. His hands are shaking. He tries to get the coins in the payphone. Can't get them. Finally gets them in. And Larry Fopp's looking at him because Larry knows this guy. And finally the guy sees Larry staring at him and he says, I've got a medical emergency, but I can't get a hold of them. And Larry can hear the busy signal. The guy's saying there's no one there, but he's hearing the This guy storms out of there. Not so much as a hi, how you doing, Larry? And he's a regular customer, but after this night, he never comes in again. This man is a half mile from our crime scene at the time of the crime, and it is Dr. Fred Leininger. Now, his veterinary clinic is right down the road. If you need to make an emergency call, why aren't you going to your clinic? Oh, that's right. The night couple that lives at the clinic that's there at night, they would be there. They would see you coming in to make a call. You know, it's kind of like O.J. Simpson. Right at the time his wife is being murdered, he suffers a severe cut to his finger, allegedly 2 miles away from the crime scene. That's a crazy coincidence. Right when your wife's being murdered, you suffer a deep cut that requires stitches. Right when the Brickas are being murdered, Leininger is distraught and says he had a medical emergency, but he doesn't go to his clinic to make the call. That's a pretty good incriminating statement. There's me. 7th grade. This is 2 weeks before the Brickas were killed. So link me to this headline. That's how long ago I started following this case. And then in 2009, here I am then. Oh, I look so good then. I wrote my Bricka chapter and my writing career started. This has been a 52-year obsession for me now. And I'm so glad to have it over with. The Bricka house, there it is the day after the murders. Look at that house. It's stained, it's tainted, it's wrecked. This house will never be the same. I mean, everybody's got bad things that happen in a house, but a triple homicide, unsolved, with a young victim. But look, 52 years later, we have no answers to this case yet. But my book, if you buy my book, I personally guarantee you I will solve this case to your satisfaction, but leaving plenty of red herrings and loose ends. Some of you may know this. I'm going to teach a class at UC on this book on Thursdays, starting next Thursday. It's at Communiversity. It's a 35-person class, and they told me today they had 33, so they're almost full up. We're going to go into this case like a deep tissue massage, like a colonoscopy, like okay, I'll stop with the analogies there. I'm going to leave you with this thought. It's my last slide. I've never given this program before, so I'm being kind of off the cuff. Look at that photo of Jerry and Linda. It's almost like a painting. As I wrote in my book at the end, what did I write? Look at them. Look at the promise of the new life together. I mean, they should, I wrote in the end, I can see their ghosts now, but it's different. Jerry's 80 years old. He's got a cane, but he's still swimming laps, gray crew cut. Linda's 75, snow white hair. She's a fiery animal rights activist with her own no-kill shelter. And beautiful, captivating Debbie, 55 years old. She's a corporate VP, pondering retirement, waiting for her first grandchild born. That's what it should be right now, isn't it? But here's the thing. Our souls are destined to abide in mystery because we are forever surrounded by ghosts. Now we must learn to live with them. Thank you. Questions? Questions, anyone? Yes, sir.
Could we get a mic here, please?
Bob, I was just curious if she was from Chicago and he was from San Francisco.
She was actually from Barrington Hills, right outside of Chicago.
What brought the two of them to Cincinnati?
Jerry worked for Monsanto at Seattle, and they transferred him. And they went out to Monsanto in Seattle and interviewed everyone that knew him. I mean, they were very thorough. Imagine going to Seattle and interviewing people that worked with Jerry 3 years ago, and none of them had stayed in touch with him. But they went out there. So yeah, they moved to Cincinnati in November of '63. Other questions?
Right here.
Who said that?
Say your first name, please.
I'm Tom. In your book, did you deal with the police presence at the scene? Did you ever talk to the first responders? You know how much they destroyed the evidence?
Sir, I'm glad you asked that question. I take the rumors and the legend head on. Was it a cover up? Was it a screw up? Did they screw up the crime scene? Did they cover up for the suspect? I interviewed 3 people in this book who were on the crime scene. I'm not going to answer your question, but that's obviously a big question. I will say this. In 1966, virtually all crime scenes were destined to be compromised. There were no specialists. There's no guys in footies and hazmat suits. The responding detective had to do everything, including gather evidence. So it's almost a given in 1966 that a crime scene will be compromised. Was it compromised enough to prevent a legal resolution to this case? Read the book. Yes. Bricka lady woman. You lived in the neighborhood, right?
Could I?
My cousin lives on that street.
Okay.
Moeller. And they were her daughter played with Debbie. Or what is it, Debbie?
Thank God for Diet Coke.
Anyway, but
Don't drink
I
Coke.
want to know if it's true that they questioned the veterinarian in the case,
They did.
but they didn't read him his Miranda rights. So that's what they just dismissed him. Is
but-
that true?
Well, it doesn't really apply. He was not under arrest. He was free to leave at any point. So Miranda didn't figure in. I'll tell you what figured in. Richard Moore, the lawyer he hired. That guy had many West Side connections, powerful family. I think the county was a little cowed, and Leininger was a socially prominent businessman. And we know how that works. You know, rich men usually aren't convicted of murder. I'm not saying he was rich. I'm sure he was doing very well. You know, it just doesn't happen. But I really don't think there was any malfeasance in this case. That's all I'm going to say.
JT, we have an online question. Are the Cincinnati police still investigating this case?
They never were. It's actually the Hamilton County Sheriff's. Cincinnati jurisdiction was 2 blocks away. There was a debate that night. The Cincinnati police wanted this case, but the county took it. The Cincinnati police would have had more resources to investigate it than the county. I wish the county had asked for more help.
Is the county still investigating it?
Absolutely.
Other questions?
Questions over here.
They'll never quit on this case, Dan.
Have,
This is Bricka.
have you found anything that the police did not know about?
Are you Glenn Stetz's wife?
Might be.
Oh, boy. What was your question?
Did you find anything that the police did not know about? Were you able to enlighten them about anything?
Oh, absolutely, because I interviewed so many people. Stuff that's not in the file, yes, but it all falls under hearsay. But I'm an armchair detective. I don't care about admissibility. In the court of the armchair detective, all of it is admissible. I did find out things that weren't in the file, absolutely. And it's all in the book. Yes, sir.
Can we take a question right back here, please?
Sure,
Would you say your first name?
Dan, are we okay on time? Okay. Well, how many people are looking to buy books? Okay, good, good. I memorized all of them. I'll hold you to it. Yes, sir.
Dan, the veterinarian thing, was that
Leininger,
Leininger?
Fred Leininger.
Leininger that came into the High and Low restaurant that evening?
The High-Low Beverage Depot.
Okay, was there ever a record of any medical response to a call that was made that night at any hospital? Was the inquiry he was trying to make?
No, nothing. And he's a vet. So what's his medical emergency? Does he have a pet emergency? And again, the Bricka crime has just gone down less than a half mile away. Larry Fopp said he came from the direction of Western Bowl, and that is the direction of our crime scene. And he was a mess. And Larry Fopp knew him. He said he'd never seen him like this. Larry Fopp sat on this information for 2 weeks. Someone tried to break into his house. And his wife said, somebody's trying to clear up a loose end. You go to the cops. And he did. And it became a linchpin statement in this file.
Question right here.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Art. I was just wondering, you said they're still investigating the case and that they found some veterinarian type tape at the scene. Have they gotten any DNA off of any of this stuff?
Not off the tape. The DNA profile in existence consists of human hair found clutched in Linda's hand, Marlboro cigarette butts found at the scene. They were not smokers, though I suspect Linda snuck one. Jerry didn't. And the seminal fluid from the rape / recent intercourse of Linda Bricka.